the listener. All right, so that's one thing you have to train them in. There will be another one that you'll have to train them in coming up later. So what I often do with stuff like this is I'll show them this as an example of what not to do.
She's got one wrapped around her head as a, just as like a headdress.
Hear that?
You can carry a baby with anything.
This is a really excellent picture, and that it draws you into the scene that you're talking about and creates a lot of excitement about what's going to happen next and where you're going. Nice use of that. Thanks.
Okay, so you can see that you can use the writing, which is good. Thank you. So what's nice about that is you could use this as a brainstorm before you were to give them a written assignment. They could either brainstorm orally or they could brainstorm just looking at the picture as a stimulus for, say, an essay or something like that. And that would be part of the writing process, right? Because the first part of the writing process is brainstorming. The second would be outlining. The third would be writing your first draft, etc. I don't think this one worked yesterday either.
It seems like there are more women than men in the market.
This is a wonderful.
Okay, so that one, also too short, right? That's a very general observation. It seems like there are more women than men in the market. And if this were my student, I would say, that's not a very good observation. Or if that is a good observation, why do you think there are more women than men in the market? Try to use your critical thinking skills to capture more information about the picture than just a general observation. So this would also, the first one would be a common error. This second one would be another common error that students frequently make when they're using VoiceThread. And then this I would use as an example. This next one is an example of a good commentary, a well thought out commentary, and long enough. Oh, sorry.
For picture, and it just shows how people have different ways of making ends meet. This old lady's well dressed, just like the way they set up gives us an inner understanding of the Malawian culture.
Hi, I'm a teacher and I'm just learning about VoiceThread. I was tickled to see your visual on your trip to Malawi, and I'm thinking about all the ways that I could use this in my classroom. Thanks a lot.
So this is so cool.
Okay. So you heard also the feedback on this last one? That's also a common mistake. And then the teacher, who was tickled to see it, there was a lot going on behind her when she was recording, and so you could hear other people's voices. You want to teach students not to do that, to try to find a room where they themselves are just speaking into the microphone where it's silent so that we can focus on what they're saying. Because the first one that we heard, I found it very difficult to focus. She said some amazing stuff about what the different layers of clothing are called on this picture, but it was really hard for me to understand her, and it was really hard for me to focus because I kept hearing the pa sound. And so these are common mistakes to teach when going over VoiceThread. Okay. So did you all see the presentation at all?
No.
No. Okay. Great. So now that you're introduced to VoiceThread, we'll start on the presentation about how to use it in the class. You're okay.
My neck hurts.
Your neck hurts? Okay, then yeah, definitely. there it is. Okay. This is, maybe not the, yeah. Okay, so this whole presentation is based on this article. You can see this article is called An Alternative to In-Class Presentations, Incorporating Student-Generated VoiceThread Projects. So it was important first to introduce you to what VoiceThread is. Some of you may have already used it. If so, that's okay. Now, these authors, you can see, Jeffrey Butler, Ryan Hunter, and Laura Kurth, what they were looking at is how do we take presentations that are primarily done in class. We all normally do them, right? You'll have a student or a group of students at the front of the room giving a presentation on a topic in English. But some of their arguments were that it's actually taking a lot of time. Okay, I'll get to the background information. It actually takes a lot of time out of your schedule to do these presentations in that way in class. So they wanted to look at alternatives that would be helpful for students. And one of the things to think about too, well, that they were thinking about, is that they want their alternatives to be online. Because students will need to be able to use the internet and to use computers in many different ways. And so by having them practice using a different software online, part of the idea was to familiarize them with different ways of presenting online material and using online material. So the background is off to the side, so I will move it again. Maybe we can move this just closer. So it was a public university in Seoul, Korea, South Korea, where they tested this. And basically, what occurred in the university is they were teaching English conversation courses. And they had to have presentations as part of the curriculum. But it didn't define whether or not it was in-class presentations. They just had to have a series of presentations that the students did. They had 100 minutes every week of lessons for this class, and that covered 15 weeks. So 100 minutes a week, what is that? Yeah, exactly, 1 hour. Can you imagine trying to have students move to the next level in their speaking in 1 hour a week? Not gonna happen. Well, I mean, it may happen, but it's not ideal, right? So that just gives you the scope of what they were working at. They also had mixed level classes. And this is something that's common for all of us, isn't it? Most of us have a variety of students in our class, from really advanced, who probably should be in the next level, to maybe some that should be in a level below, but they're struggling to keep up, you know? So we have to teach to all of them. And students, this was important, students did not have opportunities to practice English outside of the class. So the instructors were really thinking about, okay, this is our background. These are some of the issues that we have with presentations. So currently, with the background, there's no time in class for practice, because when you give a presentation, when you have a bunch of students do a presentation, how many students are normally in your classes? For me, it was somewhere around 30. Do you have a similar amount, if not more? So you imagine you give every student a 5 to 7 minute presentation, which is normal, and then how much time does it take setting up the computer? Right? If they have PowerPoints, that's an extra 4 minutes. So now you're looking at a 15-minute section for every single presenter. And if you have 30, that's a lot of time, right? And so you cannot really take time in class to practice the presentations in a way that students really need. Students need, you can say go home, practice, they're standing in front of the mirror, all those things that they teach you, when you're going to do public speaking, right? But one of the issues is when you get in front of people, it's completely different than standing in front of your bed practicing, or in standing in front of the mirror, practicing. There's a high level of anxiety and stress that comes up. And so it's ideal to have time to practice in class. But if you don't, what do you do instead? So also, presentations take class time, like we just talked about, 30 times 15 minutes each. That's a lot of class time. And another issue with presentations is that students are not paying attention. The listeners, right? So when you think back to either when you were sitting in a presentation or when you were watching your students listening to other presentations, what were they doing?
They were preparing.
Yes, exactly. You see them talking to themselves as they read through what their presentation will be. Or they are, if they're not preparing their presentation, they're looking at something else. So this is a common problem, right? And we as teachers have tried to address this problem by filling in the space with different activities. So what are some of the activities that you do with your students, like a listening activity, for them to do while there is a presenter presenting? What are some activities that you do?
I usually ask them to prepare questions.
Okay.
In order for them to be involved in the presentation.
Okay, good. So prepare questions. What else can we do?
Ask them questions.
Ask the listeners questions. Okay, good. Yeah, one of the ladies yesterday was saying that she gives pop quizzes afterwards on the topic so that the people that were listening, they should be able to get 100% on the quiz. What else can we do? So I also had them fill out a listening form. And in the listening form, they would outline the main ideas of the presentation. You know I love outlining. She started smiling because she knows me by now. But basically, it was part of what listening is. I looked at it in terms of what I wanted the students to get out of the listening activity. And I wanted them to be able to catch main ideas and follow the argument. And so that's why I had them outline, because I wanted them to be able to assess whether or not they could do that when someone else was speaking. I also had them analyze the presenter themselves. So what did the presenter do well, and what did they want to emulate in the future? And where were their areas for improvement? So basically, what would they not want to do if they were being a presenter? So it helped them to stay aware. But even so, like even with all these activities that we do, we still run into the problem of taking a huge portion of class time that we really don't necessarily want to give to presentations. So some people are in an argument where you're like, okay, well, if it takes that much class time, let's just forget about presentations. But we do need presentations for this reason. So this is a rationale of why we want to use presentations. And I will read it aloud, and then I would like for you to summarize it in your own words. So, another advantage of using tasks in L2 oral instruction is that rehearsal or task repetition affords learners an opportunity to accommodate the competing cognitive demands of fluency, accuracy, and linguistic complexity. For example, advanced planning and rehearsals of content and formulation, that is, what to say and how to say it, lead to substantial improvements in the amount of spoken discourse and in grammatical, lexical, and articulatory accuracy. What does that mean?
It helps develop speaking skills.
How? You're right, how?
Listening and speaking.
Okay, yes, but how? Like what she says, this is Ellie Hinkle. She's one of my favorite researchers in ESL field. She's absolutely brilliant. She says, Why is it important?
Because we start using the grammar structures, we start thinking how to apply, how to express what we just learned in our own words, using the grammar, maybe using different vocabulary, synonyms.
Okay, very nice. So the first stage of a presentation is taking what we learned and trying to apply grammatical structures that we know, vocabulary that we know, etc., etc. Very good. So, obviously we want to do this with students. But another really important thing she says is rehearsal. And why does she argue that rehearsal is so important in making a really good speaker of you?
It trains our memory.
Okay, it trains our memory, yes.
Self-confidence.
It develops self-confidence, but also look at what it says. It affords learners an opportunity to accommodate the competing cognitive demands. So basically, what does that mean in your words? Just right there, that little sentence, that's the little chunk of words. Affords learners an opportunity to accommodate the competing cognitive demands.
That means that if you speak a foreign language, you need to be fluent, and by doing this, it develops your fluency in language.
Very close.
You must
So
be simultaneously fluent, accurate.
exactly. So look, when it says it affords learners an opportunity to accommodate the competing cognitive demands. Competing cognitive demands that I obviously can't say. Basically what it means that when you're thinking about fluency, you can't also be thinking about accuracy and linguistic complexity at the same time. It's too much for your brain. So when you focus on one, you're not focusing on the other. That's why they're competing cognitive demands, right? And so what she's saying is that when you do the task repetitively, the first time maybe you focus on accuracy. First couple of times you're focused on accuracy. You feel like you've gotten accuracy, then you start focusing on linguistic complexity. After that, you're focused on fluency. But it takes several times of speaking your speech out loud and writing it or being in your head with it or however it is that you're practicing it for you to really be able to internalize all of this. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is why we want to practice, because we also, once we've internalized some of the phrases and some of the ways to say things, we can use those phrases in another way at another time, and they come out more naturally, right? Okay, so, then she says, for example, advanced planning and rehearsals of content and formulation, that is what to say and how to say it, lead to substantial improvements in the amount of spoken discourse and in grammatical, lexical, blah, 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 blah. So basically, we're wanting the substantial improvements in their ability to speak. And so this is why we don't give up on presentations, even though they're taking so much of our class time. And this is why our the authors who wrote this particular journal article, they wanted to address the issues that we talked about previously. So in terms of conserving class time, this was one of the issues to address. They wanted to make sure that they supported the speaking practice outside of class. Because the students go home, what do? They don't do anything with English again until you see them next week. So how can we engage them outside of the class to get extra practice and allow more time to think and respond? So one of the things that they were finding is that when we allow the students more time to think about their answers and to process the information that they were just given, they have better responses. They ask better questions. They feel less pressure. And so that was part of the reason also that the authors decided to use VoiceThread. So we have already been introduced to VoiceThread. You know that it is asynchronous, meaning that you're not communicating at the same time. It's not like chat room. It's like you leave a message, you get another message later. You saw that it was a presentation, and you saw that it has comments. Okay, so you've seen this. Did you see that there was higher ed? There's a higher ed version for individual instructors, for your department, or for a state or license. I guess that would be OBLAS. Very easy to sign up, just like email. There's also K through 12. And so some of the information is slightly different with K through 12. Okay, so we've seen all of this. When you first start using VoiceThread, we obviously have to train the students in how to do it. So one of the things that we have to start with is what to do and what not to do, right? And so what not to do, we've already talked about. You know, being too close to the microphone. Also, what were the other ones?
Make short.
Yeah, don't make too short of comments. But what was one of the positive ones? What should they do? Probably use the WH questions. Who, what, why, where, and how for all the presentations, because we want them to be thinking critically, and we want them to show their critical thinking through their responses. And so in order to do this, we have to make VoiceThread familiar to the students themselves. So the first 10 weeks of the classes that they had, and if you remember, their classes met for, how long do you remember? 15 weeks, that's right. So the first 10 weeks, the students used small homework assignments. And those small homework assignments were basically to take a topic or a theme from that week, from English class, and to talk about it for 2 minutes. Not too bad. Yeah? They would post it, they would post a picture that was related to the topic or the theme, or as the instructor, you could post the picture that was related to the topic or the theme, and then every student in your class would sign on to VoiceThread, find the picture, and record 2 minutes of just brainstorming about the topic. The nice thing about that too is they can really be fastidious about their pronunciation, the way that they're speaking, because they can just delete, record, however many times it takes to get a voice thread that they like. So that's what the authors did to make them familiar. The reason for this is obviously because you don't want to be like, okay, you're going to have a 5-minute presentation on VoiceThread, go. And they're like, well, what's VoiceThread? How do we use it? Right? So this makes sure that they're very familiar. The next step is the actual assignment itself. And so remember, this is a presentation. So this is a group presentation. So the first thing they did was assign the different students to groups. I always say, as many of you already know, that I would probably do groups of 4 people when possible, 3 to 4 people, because research shows that 4 is the ideal number for a group. So imagining that they're assigning them to groups of 4 students. So basically, the students research and explore one of the topics of their choice outside of class. Before you let them leave, though, you probably assign it in class, right? Explain to them what the presentation is about. Have them break into their groups, talk about the topic, and then go and just double check the topic is reasonable. Because sometimes they don't choose reasonable topics. So you can see that some of the important information here is that the students are assigned certain language points, meaning they have to use specific language forms. And these are forms that you've been working on them throughout the class, and or their argumentative forms that they need to be able to use in speech. So students present on both sides of the issue, and sometimes that's hard. So as the teacher, we can help coach them to find topics where they have a clear idea of what both sides of the issues are. there are some topics that are not so easy to find both sides, right? And then the students are required to present over 5 minutes. There's no end time. It's not like 5 to 10. It's just over 5 minutes. And part of what the researchers actually found was that the students ended up on average presenting for 8 minutes, which is great because you would think that they would be like 5 minutes, stop. We did our 5 minutes. That's all we had to do. But they actually went further and they did more because they were engaged in it. All right, and lastly, so the teacher did give some time during class for the groups to meet in class to talk about the topics, and that was also teacher guided. But that wasn't very often, and they said it was something like 15 minutes of class time over 3 periods, over 3 classes was designated to the groups working together in class. And then students were required to comment on one other project that presented a different issue than their project, which was important because we don't, part of the reason for that is we don't want them just giving their opinion that they already presented, because they already presented that, right? So we want them to explore something different, to challenge themselves, to be able to use the language about a topic that they're not an expert on, because they haven't already done all the research on this. Is there anything else? And this is 1 per week. So it's not just 1 out of the whole group. They divided it into 3 weeks worth of presentations. And several groups would put their voice thread in like the first week, several groups in the second week, several groups in the third week. So say there were 5 different groups presenting, first week, 5 second week, 5 third week. Students, of those 5, the students would listen to 1 in the first week. Of those 5, the students would listen to 1 in the second week, and so on and so forth. So they were actually listening to more than 1 presentation, but it was just once a week. And so it wasn't overwhelming for them, right? Because if you can imagine giving them, listen to 5 presentations and comment on those presentations for 2 minutes, they would flip out. Because it's too much extra time outside. Okay, so outcomes. I already actually shared this, right? So it saved class time, and the presentations were longer than in-class presentations. So they tended to be 8 minutes on average. And the nice thing was they didn't have to be stopped. They communicated until everything that needed to be said was said. In class, they don't have that liberty. They have to stick within the specific time frame you gave them. Students engaged in presentation and responses on average 6 to 8 comments for each presentation. So this is also great for the presenters because they have direct feedback from the other students. And what the researchers found is that they engaged in a discussion online on VoiceThread. So with the students that responded, oftentimes the group members would make a recording to address something that the other student had said. Like, thank you for your comments, let me explain a little bit more about this, or whatever it was that they were talking about. And the comments averaged about 2 to 3 minutes. And the students obviously actively took part. So one of the things that before we go there, one of the things that the instructors noticed as well, the researcher instructors, is that the students appeared, based on their comments, to really be engaged in the presentation style. They enjoyed it. They liked going back and forth. There was a lot of dialogue. They also noted in their article that it started to create a community in class that wasn't present before. And part of the reason for this is that they had students who were not they were not all in the same study cone. So they had students from all different majors, from all different levels within the university. And because of this project, they felt closer to each other because they were dialoguing online. And they didn't feel so much pressure as you would feel in the class. You know, like if you feel uncomfortable about your English, you're not gonna be, yeah, let me answer the question, and then show everybody what you don't know. Right? So this allowed them to take time to think about it, to formulate the response, and then to give the response in a way that made them feel more comfortable. So they noticed that the really shy students who refused to speak in class were very active on this form. Okay, so outside practice. Basically, when they looked at the minutes, how much time each of the groups spent on VoiceThread, they noticed that it was 149.7 minutes, which is roughly equal to 2.5 hours of additional practice in English. So that's fantastic, right? So we took our 100 minutes every week and we added 2.5 hours to that. What's really amazing to me and very exciting to me is this number. 110 of the 149.17 minutes was the students' comments, meaning that it was student generated. So it was not like in class where even if we do our best at having a student-centered class where they're doing most of the work, most of the talking, the teacher ends up speaking a lot. You know, we end up, even when we try, we're speaking more than 50% of the time, generally speaking. But what this means is that the teacher was not involved. It was the students engaging the other students. It was the students responding to each other and communicating in English, which is really exciting because they were inspired. You know, in class you oftentimes don't see this happen. Like you may give them a topic for discussion, they discuss it because they have to, but they're not like challenging each other and going back and forth and stuff like that. Sometimes that happens, but not all the time. Okay, so that's why I was excited about this. Here I also wanted to show you some of the different quotations from students themselves. So the first one, I am taking another course of conversation and I had to do the exam in front of the classmates. I was very nervous at that time, so I had a lot of mistakes. But this time I can do a few mistakes, so it is a very positive sign. So again, that's nice. Some people may argue, well, if they're able to record it ahead of time, then they're not really, what would you say? So if you're able to record it ahead of time, the mistakes that you would have made, you didn't make. And so is that really challenging the students? But I think that it is because even if they went and they did Google Translate or whatever, right? Ideally they're not, but we know that they do. They would still have to clean up Google Translate because it never translates appropriately. It translates with mistakes. And so the process that they're taking, even if they were to use a helping thing like that, is still forcing them to engage with the language, to work with the language, to change the language till they can master it so that there are no mistakes. That's worthwhile to me. So I don't mind that they have no mistakes on theirs. Okay, so another one commented on the interactive aspect of the project. I think the group project was good. It resembled Moodle. Does everyone know Moodle? Have you used Moodle before? You do? Okay, good. It's an online platform. How do you use it? Maybe could you share?
I created my own site and I installed Moodle and I use it in class.
Okay, and how do you use it in class?
Okay, usually I give for home assignment.
Okay, good. Yeah, I did that too. With Moodle, it's lovely because it's basically it functions like a website that you can go to, and then you can maybe do quizzes online on this website, and it grades the quizzes for you. You can do listening activities online, and they fill out a form, and it's easy to access. You can download videos and put them on Moodle. There's so many things that you could do with Moodle. You can, using other sites like Hot Potatoes, you can create activities, practice activities, and then upload them onto Moodle. So there's quite a lot. So that's what she meant when she was saying that it resembles Moodle. And we could talk about subject face to face, and we could share our opinion fast and easily. So I find that interesting that she would say face to face, because they're not really face to face. But I think the idea is that you can comment on what each other have said, and it's quick and easy to do it online. So obviously she enjoyed using this. What's nice about it too is that they can do it. One of the issues that I ran into with my students in Macau is that they often had jobs outside of the regular school hours as well. And so they could go home from work at 12 a.m. really quickly go online because they're not ready for bed yet. They're still like hyped up from working whatever they were doing. Go online, do like a little comment, relax, go to sleep, and then wake up for classes. So they could choose the time that they wanted to participate, and they found that really, really helpful. Okay, so the students enjoyed it. This was just 2 of 8 different very positive responses that they published. In terms of using the work that the students produce, not produces, they said that they used the work for other courses as well. So for example, earlier you watched probably 2 to 3 different voice threads, right? The last one, when I came in, I would use that for all of my courses to teach what to do and what to not to do in the voice thread. Just like you could use it for a discussion prompt. I could have played that and then had you all discuss the photo and whether or not you agreed with what they said. That photo was not particularly interesting, but if you had a really good topic that your students debated about, then that would be interesting, right? Some of the topics that my students have enjoyed discussing are weddings. Like when is the appropriate age for marriage, and does it differ? So I got a lot of these sorts of activities on this. I myself have not used VoiceThread in class, but I've used very similar programs, and when I saw this, it's very similar to some of the other work that I've done. That's why I wanted to present it, because I can see that it would work. So for a warm-up, for example, for 10 minutes with a discussion, I could use a voice thread. Or you can use it as a sample of what to do and what not to do with other students preparing to give presentations in the same manner. All right. So in terms of time, one thing that teachers are always worried about is time, right? First of all, how long does it take in class to do this, and how long does it take for us to prepare outside of class? So they answered these questions as well in the article. You can see that it was 45 minutes over 3 lessons. I explained that earlier when I said that for 3 weeks they had 15 minutes in each lesson set aside for in-class preparation. This is the group meeting, talking, engaging, and the teacher making sure that they were okay with the topic, that they had found enough information, and making suggestions for places to look if they hadn't found enough information. You could also use this time to talk about the value of the information they got. You know, if it was information from Wikipedia, not okay. They need to find other information that is more reasonable, right? Not subject to anybody's whims of changing, right? Because Wikipedia is not a refereed encyclopedia. It's just anybody can get on there. And yes, they do have footnotes that describes where the information came from, but it's not checked as well as a newspaper would be, or an online journal, or something like that. So that's the kind of information, that's where I would guide them to find their information from. Okay, the students, okay, it was 4.5 hours to actually prepare the presentation and to do everything. That's a long time, I do know that. But I think even when students do presentations in class, they're still spending the same amount of time trying to prepare the presentation. So for this, what this was is meeting as a group, finding the information, discussing how to structure the presentation, and then recording the presentation. Basically, the students felt, based on the article, the students felt like it was no more than what they would have done if they had to do this presentation in class regularly as a group. It was the same amount of outside work. Plus, on average, they had 1 hour of comments. So that was listening to comments, not only listening to comments, but listening to the different presentations. Remember, they have at least 3 presentations of at least 5 minutes each. That's already 15 minutes, plus 2 minutes of commentary, and then most of them went back and forth with the commentary. They continued to comment even after they had fulfilled their requirement as deemed by the instructors. Does that make sense? Yeah? Everyone? Yeah? You guys with me? Okay. And then for the teacher, so 1 hour, okay, this is not including how much time it took to plan, right, and to write the description and all of that. I'm sure that would have taken probably around 2 to 3 hours, which is typical for a sort of project like this is, yeah? So grading wise, it took 1 hour that was inactive, meaning that you were just downloading the VoiceThread presentations and the comments so that you could watch them from home or wherever without having to be connected to the internet. And so you're listening, you're grading your rubric or whatever form that you're using to grade the presentations as well as the comments. And so each presentation took 15 minutes to grade. So they're watching and they're grading. And what's nice about it is if you don't have a video camera, you're okay. Because one of the things that I found is I got to the point when I was teaching where I always filmed all of the presentations. Because in the middle of the presentation, I'm focusing so much on the rubric that I don't always have enough time to look up at the students and to make sure that they're standing appropriately, they're making eye contact, they're doing all of the physical forms of a presentation that we have talked about in class. And so I end up watching the presentation, filling out the form, watching it again when I go home, and just double checking that what I filled out was okay. So what's nice about this also is if you had a bad day and you have to go in and watch presentations, your mood will not impact your grading because you can watch them at any time, you can watch them again, and come to it with like a fresh, like you're tired of watching them, you go, you have a coffee, you come back, you finish grading, right? So it's I think that it's a way to be more objective in terms of how we grade. And if the students choose to challenge your group grade, if they decide that you didn't give them a high enough score, then you can go back to the VoiceThread and explain exactly why you scored it the way that you scored it. So it's all captured online. Do your students do that? Can they do that here? challenge your grades?
Sure.
Sure. Do you have to then validate what you did? Yeah. So this could save you time, yeah?
Will you grade also on voice thread or in the class?
Both. I would do both. So I would have a rubric that I was filling out with the categories of what I was grading, right? And does anyone remember the categories? What were they? For this.
Structure.
There was, yes, structure would be one of them, but we were looking for specific grammar forms and or word phrases or chunks that the students were using. We were looking at both sides of the argument, right? So these, and there was one other thing. Does anyone remember it?
Fluency?
Yeah, fluency could be part of the grade. Absolutely, why not? So I would have those on my form, and I would have from 1 to 4, 1 to 5. 5 being good, 1 being not so good. And then I would go through and I would grade them. And I would take notes also on the back and give them the feedback. But then I would also probably explain. Online, I would not give their score, but I would say what is positive and what are areas for improvement online.
You will say only to the authors or for the whole class?
I think that depends on the teacher. If you know your class and you know that it would be okay for all of them to listen, then yeah, or you could send an individual link with your voice recording to the authors. Depends on the class and their comfort level as well as your comfort level. I'm more of a private person, so I probably would send it directly to the authors themselves. I can also see that if you presented it to the entire class, then it may give others an unfair advantage because you've given some corrections on some, and then the groups in week 3, they can incorporate all those corrections and get a higher score. So, in order to not have that argument with students about like helping others, I would probably individually record it. But that's just me. I mean, some people are happy to just share it with the world. I may say what I like about it though, because I think it's good for everybody to hear that it was a good presentation. Any other questions? Does anyone have any questions while we're here? No? Okay. In terms of your context, do you think that using something like this would be helpful in your context where you're teaching? For you who's using Moodle, I would think that would be...
Now I'm thinking about how to
Incorporate it, yeah.
Does the system work as a separate platform or?
You can embed it.
Ah.
So it's perfect for you actually.
This was my first question when I started watching it.
Yeah, if you can embed or not. Yeah, it's really, let me show you actually. Like, when you're looking at it, is this where it is? I have to look around a little bit. Show options. One of these, inner full screen. Okay, sorry, I will find it, I promise. Yeah, there we go. Embed. And you can also share. So it's I knew it was very easy. I know it's gotta be right there. Oh, and let me just flip back here because I want to show you the references in case you all are interested in reading the article that I just sort of explained. This is where it is, the Butler, here, use this. This one. You can see it's a recent article. 2013 was only last year, and really only like a month ago. So you can see it's in peer perspectives. So a play on like peer work, peer review, right? Our peers as teachers, and it is online. Okay. Then the other one, Current Perspectives on Teaching the Four Skills, is found in TESOL Quarterly, and that's the one that I mentioned, Ellie Hinkle. Even if you don't, this is an excellent, excellent article. What we just talked about is one of the arguments that she gives about speaking practice in class, but she also gives a lot of information about reading, writing, and listening, obviously, the four skills. So it's worth a read. When I accessed it, I was able to find it for free because it's from an old version of TESOL Quarterly. So I hope that you can find it as well. I don't remember how I got it, but I had to do some searching. Any other questions, comments, concerns, ways to incorporate?
It will welcome. It was a very interesting topic, and the discussion may go out of your control.
And that's okay. Be willing to be with the chaos. Well, I actually think that some of the discussions that go out of control are okay, because they're actually engaged in it. You know, any time for me that students are excited to speak in English and they're going back and forth in English, I'm like, okay, just go. Just do it, engage, that's fine.
But there is a thread, and when their parents will read it.
Well, I mean, this is part of teaching them what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, right? You also have to teach them what to say. It's just like writing an email. Tone is important. You know, you can say one sentence and have it interpreted 2 or 3 different ways. Negative ways, neutral ways, and positive ways. In the same way that you can leave comments on VoiceThread. So you do have to do some work at the beginning. And that's why they had the 10 weeks of small homework assignments to talk about those issues with the students. And or just put a sheet on Moodle saying like, VoiceThread etiquette. And just let them know what is acceptable and what's not acceptable and have them go through it in class, and then you're done and you're like, it's your responsibility now. Here, sign your life away on this pledge so that you have read and understand. And then it's a way to make it silly, but to also make sure that you're communicating what's acceptable behavior. So, I mean, obviously they're not going to be cussing each other out, right? Or saying like, that was so stupid, I can't believe you, da-da-da-da. You need to make sure that kind of engagement doesn't happen, because that's not positive in English. Okay, other questions, comments, or concerns? Sorry again for being late, it's not going to happen again. You know when you get older and you have something that's really small and you think your eyesight is better than it is, and you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, that's great, and then you realize that you were older and you weren't looking at it correctly. That's what happened today.
We're all humans, and we understand.
Just to let you know, if you haven't already heard, these are 2 new additions to our books. This one is fantastic. Well, they're both fantastic, otherwise I would have brought them to you. This is called The Color of Water. It's a black man's tribute to his white mother. He was raised in Harlem, and it is a very interesting story about what it means to be defined by color and not defined by color, and be of mixed race. It's fascinating and wonderful. And this is a very, very, you can see that it was over 2 years on the New York Times bestseller list. This is State of Wonder. This is a very interesting book. It's a thriller, really, about a woman who is a research scientist at a pharmaceutical company in Minnesota, and her colleague goes to the Amazon to follow up on some research that they were doing for a malarial vaccine and dies. And so she goes to finish his research and also find out what happened to him. Because the telegram sharing that he died only said he was dead, sorry. And so she's like, what? And so she goes, and it's her adventure through the Amazon. It's also an adventure of self-discovery for herself as well. So both of them are going to be added very soon, and you'll be able to check them out. The next book on our book club, which is meeting on Monday, the 3rd of February. Have you done all this already? Is Happiness Project.
No books available.
No books are available. Sorry about that, but you can get. No, I can't say that. You say that.
It is on the internet. You can download for free.
Okay, so, or you can go, pretending that wasn't said, you can go to her website and you can find a lot of the themes from the book on the website. Don't feel like you have to read the entire book to show up, because it's all in different chapters. And so you're welcome to read a chapter and we can discuss that chapter, or 2 chapters, or just come with the idea of what do you want to talk about happiness.